My adopted sister humiliated me at her 18th birthday party. But when her biological mother showed up and gave me a blank check, Christina and my parents begged me on their knees for the money. I'm 19 years old. I'm in college, and I need to tell this story because it basically helped me understand that family isn't always what you think it is. I guess I should start from the beginning, when my parents adopted Christina, although at that time I was too young to understand what was really happening. I was like 2 years old when she arrived. I mean, I don't even have clear memories of a life without her. But what I do remember perfectly is how ever since I can remember, everything has always been about Christina, her needs, her achievements, her parties, her tantrums. My parents basically built their lives around her, and I was, I don't know, like another piece of furniture in the house. Something that was there, but nobody really noticed unless it got in the way. When I was a kid, I thought maybe it was my fault. You know, that maybe I wasn't good enough or interesting enough for my parents to pay attention to me. Christina was always a very demanding child, one of those who, if she didn't get what she wanted immediately, would throw herself on the floor and put on a show, and my parents, instead of correcting her, would just give her everything. I remember once, I must have been like 8 years old and she was 7. I wanted the same toy that Christina had asked for Christmas. Nothing special. One of those talking dolls. And my mom told me no because Christina had already asked for that one, and we couldn't have the same one because then Christina would get upset. Like, seriously? But that's how everything was. Always. If Christina wanted to watch a movie on TV, we watched that movie. If Christina wanted pizza for dinner, we ate pizza, even though I was allergic to cheese and ended up with a stomachache. If Christina wanted me to lend her my new clothes, I had to lend them to her, and if she stained or ripped them well too bad, it was my fault for not taking better care of them. The thing is that as we grew up, Christina got worse. Much worse. She wasn't just a spoiled child anymore. She became a completely unbearable teenager who believed the whole world owed her something. Everything had to be big, spectacular, perfect for her. Her birthdays were like Hollywood productions, with decorators, DJs, everything you can imagine. While my birthdays were like a dinner at home with pizza and maybe a cake from the supermarket if they had time to buy it. It's not that I needed big parties, honestly, but it hurts when you see such a marked difference. You know what I mean? It's like they were constantly telling you that you're not worth the same, that you don't deserve the same. And the worst part is that Christina noticed and loved rubbing it in my face. At school, she bullied me in front of her friends, saying I was the weird sister, the one who didn't fit in, the one nobody wanted in the family. My parents never did anything. Never. Every time I tried to talk to them about how I felt, they would tell me I was exaggerating, that Christina was just being playful, that I was too sensitive, that I should be grateful to have a sister. Grateful. Can you believe it? I think it was around 15 years old when I stopped trying to connect with them. I simply focused on my studies, got good grades, got a partial scholarship to college, and basically counted the days until I could leave that house. College was like breathing for the first time in years. Like I was finally in a place where nobody compared me to Christina, where I could just be me. But well, I still had to come home on vacations and special occasions, and that's where the real story begins. About 6 months ago, it was Christina's 18th birthday, and of course my parents organized a gigantic party. I'm talking about a tent in the backyard, professional catering, live band, lights, themed decoration. They invited like 150 people. Basically, it was bigger than some weddings I've seen. I was in my second year of college at that time, and came home for the party because my parents asked me to, well, more like demanded it. They said it would look very bad if the older sister didn't show up on such an important date. So I arrived the day before, and from the moment I entered the house, Christina was already in full diva mode, screaming orders at everyone, complaining about every little detail that wasn't exactly as she had imagined it. The night of the party arrived, and it was exactly the kind of pretentious event you would expect. Christina was wearing a dress that probably cost more than my semester's tuition, and she was in her element, being the center of attention, posing for photos, flirting with boys, acting like she was the protagonist of a movie. I was there in a corner, in a simple dress I had bought at a thrift store, trying to go unnoticed and counting the minutes for this whole thing to end. But then came the moment for speeches. You know, when people stand up and say nice things about the birthday person, and Christina decided that she was also going to give a speech, which was weird because usually speeches are given by other people, not the birthday person themselves. But well, Christina was never one to follow normal rules. She stood there with the microphone, all smiling and sweet, and started saying things like, "Thank you all for coming. How blessed she felt. Blah, blah, blah." And I thought, okay, this is going to end soon. But then, and I swear this took me completely by surprise, she turned and pointed at me and said, "And I especially want to thank my older sister for being here tonight. I know it must be difficult for her to see all this, considering she's never achieved anything significant in her life." The music was still playing softly in the background, but I felt like all the noise had been turned off, like 150 pairs of eyes had turned to look at me at the same time. Christina continued, with that fake smile on her face, saying things like, "Look, I know she does what she can. She's in college on a partial scholarship. How nice. But let's say not all of us are born to shine. Some of us are born to be, how to put it, ordinary. And that's okay. Someone has to be average, right?" People were laughing uncomfortably, some were looking away, and I was standing there feeling like I had been physically slapped. But wait, because it gets better, or worse, depending on how you look at it. Christina continued. She said something like, "And let's not even talk about her appearance. Poor thing. She inherited the wrong genetics. But well, personality is what matters. Although it's not like she stands out there either." At that moment, I looked for my parents, expecting them to intervene, to tell her to stop, something, anything. But they were just standing there with uncomfortable expressions but doing nothing. Absolutely nothing. I felt tears starting to form in my eyes, but I refused to cry. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Just when I thought it couldn't get worse, a voice cut through the air. It was my aunt. My mom's older sister, who I knew but we didn't have much of a relationship with because she lived in another state and worked as an executive at some big company. She walked to the front, took the microphone from Christina's hands, and said, "Well, what an interesting speech, Christina. Really revealing of your character." There was an uncomfortable silence, and my aunt continued, "And since we're sharing truths tonight, I think there's something everyone should know." She turned to Christina and said, "I'm your biological mother. I gave you up for adoption to my sister when you were days old, because at that time I wasn't in a position to raise you. But I've always been close, watching, waiting for the right moment to reveal it." You can imagine the chaos that broke out. Christina went pale, then red, then started screaming that it was a lie, that she was making things up, but my aunt simply pulled documents out of her purse, adoption papers, birth certificates, everything. My parents looked like they wanted the earth to swallow them up, and people started murmuring and pulling out their phones to record all the drama. My aunt then turned to me, walked over to where I was, and said, "I've seen for years how they've treated you in this family, how they've made you less, and I want you to know that I'm not like them." She pulled a check from her purse, but it wasn't a normal check. It was a blank check with her signature already on it, and handed it to me saying, "This is for you, for your education, for your future, for whatever you need, because you do deserve to have opportunities." Christina literally went crazy, started screaming that the check was hers, that it was her party, her birthday, her money. She tried to snatch it from my hands, but I quickly pulled it away. My parents finally reacted, but not to defend me. Oh no. They came over and basically begged me to give the check to Christina, that she needed it more, that I already had my scholarship, that this would ruin the party. The party was already ruined, obviously. People were recording everything. Some had already left, others were standing there watching the spectacle like it was a reality show. Christina was still hysterical, crying and screaming, saying that I always ruined everything for her, that I was selfish. How dare I take what was hers? My aunt looked at me and said, "Your car is outside. Get your things and come to my house. You don't have to stay here one more minute." And that's exactly what I did. I went up to my room, put my clothes in a suitcase, and left that house while Christina was still screaming and my parents were trying to calm her down like they always did. I left with my aunt that night, and honestly, it was like taking a giant weight off my shoulders, like finally being able to breathe without feeling like someone was suffocating me. My aunt's house was beautiful, peaceful, and she treated me like I had never been treated in my life, with respect, with genuine interest, in what I thought and felt. But obviously that wasn't the end. The next few days were absolute madness. My parents called me and sent me messages nonstop, like I was getting like 50 messages a day, all saying the same thing, that I had to come back home, that I had to apologize to Christina, that I had to give her the check because it was the right thing to do. I ignored them for a couple of days until I finally answered and gave them an ultimatum. I told them, okay, you want the check. Here are my conditions. Christina has to apologize publicly, on social media, for everything she said at her party. And you have to publicly disown her too. Tell the world that you're ashamed of her behavior and that I was always the better daughter. I told them that if they did that, then I would consider giving them the check. The thing is that, and this is the best part of it all, I never intended to give them that check. Never. From the moment I set those conditions, I knew it was impossible for them to fulfill them. But I wanted to watch them suffer. I wanted them to feel even a fraction of what I had felt for years. And it worked perfectly. Days went by and they tried to negotiate, to say they would make the apologies in private, or that Christina would make a video but without specifically mentioning what she had said. And I simply kept saying no. The conditions are clear. Either you fulfill them exactly as I set them or there's no deal. Christina was completely desperate because, it turns out, she had plans to use that money for I don't know what. Probably a new car or a trip or something equally frivolous. They started fighting among themselves. My parents blaming Christina for having ruined everything with her speech. Christina blaming them for not having controlled me better. Basically, everything was falling apart, and I was there at my aunt's house, living my best life, going to online classes, eating well, sleeping well for the first time in years. My aunt completely supported me, told me to do what felt right and that she was on my side no matter what. After like a week of this, I sent them a final message. I told them, you know what? I've thought a lot about this and I've come to a conclusion. I'm never going to give you this check. It was never my intention to give it to you. I just wanted you to feel what it feels like to be manipulated and used, just like you manipulated and used me my entire life. I turned off my phone after sending that message because I knew what was coming. And I was right. When I turned it back on hours later, I had literally hundreds of messages, missed calls, voicemails from Christina crying and screaming, from my parents saying I was a horrible person, that I had betrayed them, that they would never forgive me. I blocked their main numbers, but then they started using burner phones, created fake social media accounts to send me messages. Basically, they were harassing me. My aunt suggested I consider a restraining order, but I just wanted them to leave me alone. So I blocked everything I could and moved on with my life. I thought eventually they would get tired and move on. But no. Because Christina is Christina, and she's never accepted not getting what she wants. Like 2 weeks after all this, I was at my aunt's house on a Saturday afternoon, doing homework in the living room, when I heard a car arrive outside. I looked out the window and saw Christina's car. Well, the car my parents had bought her. A new BMW because of course. She got out of the car like a hurricane, walked to the door and started ringing the doorbell insistently, then pounding on the door, screaming my name. My aunt was at work, so I was alone. And honestly, I got a little scared because Christina sounded completely unhinged. I yelled at her from inside that she should leave or I would call the police, but she said she wasn't leaving until we talked. I made the mistake of opening the door, thinking we could have a civilized conversation. But the moment I opened it, Christina practically threw herself inside, pushing me aside. She started yelling at me that I had ruined her life, that because of me, our parents were fighting all the time, that her friends were making fun of her for what happened at her party, that everything was my fault. I told her the only one to blame was herself for being a horrible person, and that made her worse. She started searching through the house, opening drawers, moving things, saying she knew I had the check hidden there and she was going to find it. I told her the check was in the bank, in a safety deposit box, but she didn't believe me. The situation got completely out of control. We were screaming at each other in the middle of the living room. She was saying horrible things about me and about my aunt. I was telling her truths about her behavior that she clearly didn't want to hear. And then, to make things worse, my parents arrived. Apparently, Christina had told them where she was going and they decided to follow her like 20 minutes later. They entered the house without knocking, because Christina had left the door open, and a full-blown family fight started. My parents demanding that I give them the check, Christina crying and screaming, me defending myself and telling them to get out of my aunt's house or I would call the police. My aunt arrived in the middle of all this, and when she saw the scene, she got furious. She yelled at everyone to get out of her property immediately, that they had no right to be there. But my parents started arguing with her too, saying that she had caused all this by giving me the check, that she was trying to steal their daughter. The neighbors, obviously, heard all the commotion and someone called the police. 2 patrol cars arrived and had to separate all of us. Basically, it was super humiliating for everyone involved. The police told my parents and Christina that they couldn't be there without my aunt's permission, and that if they came back, there could be legal consequences. After that disaster, my aunt and I decided that the best thing was for me to return to college early, even though there were still like 2 weeks before classes started. I left the next day, went back to my dorm, and honestly, it was a relief to be away from all that drama. The first thing I did when I arrived was go to the bank and cash the check. My aunt had told me to put in whatever amount I needed, and I put in enough to cover the rest of my college career, plus a little extra for emergencies. It was surreal to see that money in my account, like I had never had more than $1,000 saved, and suddenly, I had enough to not worry about money for years. I blocked my entire family on absolutely everything, changed my phone number, closed my social media accounts, and opened new ones with maximum privacy settings. I basically erased myself from their lives in the most complete way possible. My aunt is the only one I keep in contact with. We talk almost every day, and she comes to visit me every so often. She told me that my parents and Christina tried to sue her for the check, but they had no legal case because the money was legally hers and she could give it to whoever she wanted. It's been 6 months since all this, and I haven't heard anything from them directly, although my aunt tells me they're still angry that Christina had to get a part-time job because my parents can no longer maintain her expensive lifestyle, and that the house is constantly tense because they all blame each other for what happened. Honestly, I don't feel even a bit of guilt. I know there are people who would say I should forgive, that they're my family, but the truth is they never treated me like family. They treated me like an obligation, like something they had to tolerate while they focused all their love and resources on Christina. Now I'm in my 3rd year of college. I have an excellent GPA. I work part-time at the campus library because I want to, not because I need the money. And honestly, I'm in the best mental place I've been in my entire life. Sometimes I think about how things would have been if my aunt hadn't shown up that night, if she hadn't given me that check. And I probably would still be trapped in that toxic dynamic, trying to earn love that I was never going to receive. The check was important, yes, but what really freed me was finally understanding that I don't have to keep fighting for people who are never going to value me.